Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on today's presentation on maximizing the experience to keep patients coming back to your practice. We've got some people filing in right now. We're going to give it just a minute here as more people are rolling into the presentation. We'll be with you in just a moment. All right. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Like I said, this is Dylan Kemna with OptiCall. I'm going to be the moderator on today's presentation on maximize the experience to keep patients coming back to your practice. We pulled this webinar together kind of heading into the AAO, American Academy of Ophthalmology, to talk a little bit about just the overall experience from beginning to end to when the patients connect with your practice to when they leave from your practice. We've got two speakers today. We're going to start with the president and CEO of OptiCall, Bill Mercier. Bill, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good deal. All right. Well, thank you, Dylan. We appreciate you starting us off, and we appreciate everybody getting on the phone with us today as well. We're going to get right into this. We've got a lot of material to recover. I know we've got some practices that are familiar with us on the line today. I know we've got some other practices that are not familiar with OptiCall and maybe just part of our list and interested in webinars that we do. So let me get started and tell you a little bit about our company for those who may not know about OptiCall and who we are. I'm just waiting for my slides to move here. Okay, there we go. So a little bit about OptiCall. We're a leading provider in the elective medical phone services. The company was founded back in 2002. Really around elective procedures and the LASIK procedure, and since then we've evolved over the years to take a whole host of different types of medical elective phone calls, including plastics and aesthetics.
We're still on the first slide. Sorry to talk over you.
All right, let's, there we go.
There we go.
How's that? Okay, perfect.
Yep, we can see the about.
Our focus over the years has been maximizing that customer experience to convert more of the calls into patients. So we really try to do our best to make every single phone call an experience rather than sound like a transaction. To date, we've handled over 2 million phone calls. It boosted our clients' revenue by 15 to 20% above the industry average. So what we've proven is handling the phones right and doing the right thing on the phones can create more consultations and more surgeries. And it's just simple math like that. So talk to you a little bit about integrated medical management. And this is Don Sanders, who is we're fortunate enough to have on the phone with us today. Don has been working in ophthalmology practices since 1987. He specializes in practice re-engineering and profit enhancement and focuses on integrating retail medicine into medical practices. I've worked with Don for quite a few years, and we have quite a few projects going together, and he's just got a tremendous amount of knowledge in helping practices really get things going. So we're pleased to have him on the phone with us today as well. So a little bit about the overview. We want to talk about making your best first impression, how important that is when patients are calling into your phones. We want to talk about creating an exceptional experience for those patients as well, and why that's important. We're going to talk about best practices for patient retention, and we're going to learn how a program that we have called Boomerang can help recover some of the lost patients. So within any practice, there are really two major opportunities to grow. The very first way to grow is through the new potential patients that you have coming in. Now, here's the challenge that we have with new patients that are calling in today. There's a little bit different process that they go through when they are making a patient inquiry. Just a few years ago, we used to be able to put a radio ad on. We used to get a lot of word of mouth referrals in our practices, and that was good enough. That was easy enough to generate a phone call. Pretty simple. What's happened over the years with the internet and making it so much easier for patients to be able to research things that they're interested in is we might place a radio ad or somebody might hear word of mouth, but then what happens is we go to the internet for things that we're really interested in, things that we want to have done, or goods or services, whatever it is, expensive things. We do a tremendous amount of research. From there, what we do is we check with our social network. We find out, do we have any friends or family members that have had the same thing that we're interested in, or can they recommend anybody? And then beyond that, what we're looking at is we're looking at reviews. Reviews have become such a big part of the new patient process and researching who they're going to go to, that it's important that we pay attention to how well we're doing with our reviews. And after they go through all of this process now, it generates the phone call. So it's quite different than it has been in the past. And why has this happened? Well, the bottom line is we have changed the way that we're buying things. Over the years, there have been new companies that have come out, and these companies have a different way of getting those goods and services to us. And the problem that we have now is that our biggest competition isn't the practice that's down the road that provides the same services as we do. It's all of the other companies that we deal with before we call that doctor's office. It's the experience that we're having with Amazon.com or Apple or Starbucks or Uber, whoever these newer companies are and the processes that they have. It's the experience that we have with them that's setting the expectations that we have now for making that patient inquiry. And the bottom line is consumerism has really affected the patient experience. Now, here's the problem with it. If it was a poll that was done by GE Healthcare, 75% of frequent healthcare consumers are actually frustrated with their patient experiences. And I'm sure that the people on the phone today can definitely say that they have had an experience at some point in time, whether it's their dentist or their doctor or whoever it may be, that was a frustrating experience. And that's not what we want to do when we want to bring these new customers in. Here's another problem. There's a real perception versus reality situation going on. 63% of the providers that were polled felt like they were delivering on a great patient experience, when their patients, only 40% felt like that provider was giving that great patient experience. There's a real problem here that the doctors think they're doing better than what they were doing. And I just pulled this review out. My wife and I were looking at trying to find a Sprint store in the area, and we just thought this was kind of comical. When you look at this review, the only reason they get a star is because there's no option for no star. This was one of the worst reviews that I've ever seen, but the problem is, because of all this consumerism, what we're doing now is we're allowing things like this, reviews and everything else that we do, to go through that decision-making process to drive, are we going to do business with that store or that doctor's office or whatever it may be. So when we think about trying to be successful in creating that experience, the best thing that we can do is we can look at the businesses that we cannot do without and what makes them successful. What are the habits that they do? Well, the number one thing is it's the relationship that they've built with their customers. It's how they personalize that experience and make the customer feel unique and cared for. And this is what keeps me going back to restaurants. It keeps me going back to doctor's office, the girl that cuts my hair, all of these different things. It's that relationship that they've built that makes them successful. Second thing is, it's the consistency of the experiences that they deliver. Every time you go into that business, they deliver the same experience. It's dependable. It's what they promise. It's everything that they said that they would do, no matter when you go in there. Third thing is, their employees always engage the customers. So they're enthusiastic. When you walk in, they greet. They may even know your name, and they greet you with your name. So there's a lot of different things that make you feel comfortable when you meet up with their staff. Another thing is, it's the way that they react when something goes wrong. They make it right, no questions asked. There's no excuses. They're just going to make the situation right and make sure that you're happy when you leave, because if you're happy when you leave, you're going to refer your friends and family to their business. And the final piece is, it's how well all their employees are so well trained, not only technically, but at hospitality. One of the biggest mistakes that we make when we bring new staff members into our practices is we get them on the phones, we put them in front of the patients so quickly that they barely even know what services our offices have to offer. They barely even know how to answer the phone system or get into the scheduling system, and they definitely were not trained on the hospitality side. And so when we think about the training programs that we want to put together, we want to put together something that also incorporates some customer service training as well. And here's just a little fun fact. 94% of the money that we spend on our marketing budgets are actually spent on persuading the customer to call, but we only devote 6% of those marketing budgets on answering that phone call. So in creating that patient experience does more than increase just the patient satisfaction. It helps the entire practice with driving down operating costs and improving the bottom line. This is a big one, improving employee satisfaction and retention. I can tell you, when you and think again about your own experiences, if you go into a business and you see the same person that's there all the time, it makes you feel like you've got a stable business that you're going to, like they're doing something right there, especially if they're happy. If you go into a business and the people at the front desk are constantly changing, it kind of makes you wonder, what are they doing? How come they can't keep good people around? And the third thing is it builds brand and reputation. You can't you can't buy the power of positive feedback. You really have to earn that. And that's one of the things that a great patient experience can do. So if consistency is a key to really trying to get these patients happy when they're coming into their office, one of the big keys, why do we lose that consistency? Well, one of the reasons is that we have sometimes the wrong people that are answering the phones. And the phone's are the very first impression that anybody has of our practice. If we have the wrong person that's answering those calls, well, we're not putting our best first impression out there for the persons that's calling in. That can have an impact on new patients, and it can also have an impact on existing patients on whether they want to stay with the practice or not. Another thing is sometimes there's improper training or no training at all. As I had just mentioned a couple minutes ago, we have the need to get a body in the seat, but what we don't do is we don't train them the way that they need to be trained in order to give that best first impression. And that is a big mistake. Another difficult thing for many, many practices is phone staff are multitasking. We don't all have the luxury of having a call center within our organization, so the people that are answering the phones are sitting at the front desk, so they're checking patients in, checking patients out. Their attention is pulled in so many different directions that they don't have the opportunity or the ability to give 100% devoted attention to the person on the phone or the person in front of them. And the fourth final piece here is staff turnover. So one of the things that we've done in our own company, and this is something that you can very easily do to help provide some consistency, is to create some sort of a system that your staff work from. We use a program that we've developed internally. It's called OptiTrack. Basically what it does is allows us to kind of script a phone call and walk through the process of a phone call. And in doing this, what we do is we make sure that every single one of our staff members answers a phone in a very similar fashion. Although they all have their unique personalities and they all have their unique way to speak, they all handle the phone call with a certain flow that provides that consistency that you can count on when you're calling in to make sure that you're giving the experience that you're looking to give out. And so, Dylan, did you want to talk a little bit about the mystery shop offer that we're going to?
Yes, yeah, I appreciate that, Bill. And just thought it would be worth mentioning on that screenshot of the OptiTrack software that's specifically for what we call our first contact service, and that's the program where we actually help practices with their inbound phone leads, where OptiCall can serve as the primary on phone leads that come through, or we can actually serve as a backup or extended hours of coverage, where we're available 7 days a week. So, and Bill mentioned we follow that system there. This mystery shop offer is just a free offer for those that attended the webinar today to help get a barometer on how well your staff is converting. And every practice that takes advantage of this offer usually finds some opportunity for improvement. Most practices are very surprised with the results that they see. And we're not looking to stump your counselors. We're just trying to get an idea of, is the right person available? Do they just answer the questions and feel like they're doing their job? Or do they actually engage the caller and invite them in and all that good stuff? But if you'd like to get an idea on how your staff is doing, we've got a question on the survey when you close out of the webinar today with that mystery shop offer. So we encourage you to take advantage of that.
Excellent. So we talked a little bit about in the beginning, there's two opportunities to really increase revenue and the patient experience. The second one is your existing patient opportunities, the folks that have already been coming to you. Now, there's a real challenge that practices face with regards to this, and that is that not all patients will come back for the visits that they're supposed to come back for. In fact, the average practice has thousands of inactive patients that have not been coming back to them, and the recall efforts that we do typically get about 50% or less responses. And then to add on top of that, cancellations and no-shows can add an additional 8% to losses too. So recall efforts are just not enough to get those patients in. The fact is, it costs a practice 5 to 6 times as much to bring in that new customer than it does to retain an old one. Well, what's going on across the United States? There was a survey that was done of 25 medical practices across the United States, and basically with regards to these recall notices, here's what happened. 67% will send 1 additional notice, only 28% send 2 additional notices, and 6% send 3 additional notices. And these are notices, and so I don't know about anybody that's on the phone, but I can tell you what I do when I get my mail every single day. I get my mail and it goes into 2 piles. I got my junk pile and I got my bill pile. If it's not a bill, typically it goes in the junk pile. And so I don't make a response to these notices. So I would fall into that category of falling through the cracks. It literally takes somebody to pick up the phone, make a phone call to me, and get me to come back for a doctor's visit. So why do patients get lost? Well, there's a number of reasons. Number one, they could slip past the front desk if you're in the habit of trying to schedule them for their next visit. They might be busy trying to make another meeting or get the kids off the bus or whatever it is, and they walk right past the front desk. Second thing is, recalls aren't necessarily always entered into the system, so they never pop up when that patient's due, so we don't even have the opportunity to know that they were missed. Recall notices aren't sent in some cases, And as I just mentioned, recall notices and calls are ignored. Patients cancel and patients no-show. So with this, I want to bring Don in because Don has really become an expert over the past 25 years of doing this and really trying to get practices to work like a fine-tuned machine inside. And Don, I'd like you to talk a little bit about practices and what they can do about this type of thing.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. And say good afternoon to everybody. One of the things, what Bill's talking about is the phone and how the phone affects things, recalls, and many of us are well aware of the fact that our recall programs are not very effective. A lot of them, I've noticed, the electronic systems don't even identify which people don't respond to a recall, so those patients just end up lost. Frequently, when I'm brought into a practice, it's either it's a functional problem that the practice is just not functioning, or it's a financial issue. And a lot of times when I come into a financial issue, the first thing I'll look at is I'll say, where's your inactive files? And I'll find thousands of inactive files, which to me is gold. The key is that we have a problem in medical practice. And I wanted to present just a simple math problem for everybody to think about. And that's, do your number of new patients exceed the number of patients in your practice who have died or have relocated? Now, if you think about that for a minute, the reason I'm asking that is a medical practice should never stop growing, even somewhat exponential. After 25 years in this business, where I know many doctors across the country, I'm amazed sometimes at some practices that never get past being a one-doctor practice, yet another practice that started the same 20 years ago is up to 5 doctors. And frequently the difference is just how they're managed and how they treat patients. One practice just doesn't lose patients. Unless they die or move away, they don't lose patients. They're constantly attracting new patients. As you all know, new patients bring friends and relatives. So it's this exponential growth that they then feed by bringing in more doctors and growing their infrastructures and their physical structures. But what's the effect? The effect, there's a detrimental effect on revenue. When these people, and a lot of times you see it in doctor schedules, there's openings in the schedule where they're filling it with follow-ups instead of filling it with annual exams. And of course, there's an adverse effect on reputation. That when you have people who do not respond to a recall and it's due to the fact that the practice hasn't delivered what they expected or hoped, they're going to tell 10, 20 people, oh, I wouldn't go there. They're terrible. The person at the front desk is terrible. The clinic runs late. The doctor comes in late. The doctor's always on the telephone, and you sit and you wait in the exam room. And I know this is true, and a lot of you are probably smirking right now. These are the things that will kill a practice, or at least get it where it will never grow. So the first thing you want to do is you want to do what I call the self-examination. Are you the best that you can be? And I suggest taking within the practice, creating a team, 2 or 3 people that work with the administrator and even the doctor if he's so interested, that you start to look at your own practice. You look at it starting at the waiting room door. Now, I left the telephone out, but I've got to tell you, the telephone's the first place that people get the first impression. So I'm going to leave that to Bill, because that's one thing Bill's group is incredible at, getting your people on the phones to know how to handle phone calls and know how to act on a phone call. Once the people hit that door, what does that physical plant look like? What's your waiting room look like? Staff training. Bill mentioned it. It's incredibly important. We do nothing. We literally hire warm bodies. We don't test them. I had funny experiences where I said to somebody, they had one of their managers they had hired that we had to let go. I said, why did you hire them? And the answer I got was, they were so nice at the interview. I'm like, but did they know anything? I mean, there's more to hiring people than they're nice. They've got to know something. I prefer hiring people who have experience, and I believe in paying them more, because I'll get more out of them. inexperienced people there's room for, but that shouldn't be the major core of your practice. Staff attitudes. You can't teach attitude. People either have an attitude or they don't. And if you interview people 2 or 3 times, which sometimes I like to do, by the 3rd time, you will get a real sense of what their real attitude is. But I can tell you, and you've all experienced this, if you go to a Starbucks, a Walgreens, they're the 2 that always jump into my head. Their people are happy. They're always happy. I mean, you go in Starbucks, they're not paying them $1 million a year. They're happy. How can we help you? What can we do? Same thing, you walk into Walgreens, hey, how are you? That's what you get. They're probably told to do that, but they do it with a happy face. And of course, your clinic operations are something you really need to look at. Are your patient templates properly designed? Does your doctor come in on time? Are your techs trained so that they can keep up with the template? People design templates, but then they never back check to make sure their staff is actually capable of producing that template. Very important to do. So that's productivity. Go to the next slide. So some of the things over time that I know I've done, Bill's helped me a number of times over the last 10 years, is implementing practice improvement programs. And OptiCall's always, in my book, I got to be honest, it's always part of my solution. But in implementing practice improvement programs, you're taking that self-assessment that you just did, you're writing a practice improvement plan that those 3 people can help you with, and you begin to implement that strategy. Because once OptiCall starts bringing these patients back, remember, these are patients who have chosen not to come back. So now when they reintroduce them to the practice, you want them to see the changes you've made. You want them to see that the clinic runs better. In fact, I would love to know, we can't do it in this format, but it would be interesting to know how many of you, when your employees make recalls, are told, oh, I'll never come back to your office. It took me 3 hours to have an exam. I'll bet that comes up a lot of times. And that's unacceptable. It shouldn't take 3 hours to have a comprehensive exam, unless there's something complicated in that examination. So one of the things you want to do is you want to start to get towards industry standards in some of that. So you want to implement your improvement program, and then my recommendation, as it always is get OptiCall to come in, let them start their recall program, and we're going to show you some of the results they get. They're staggering, the amount of money that they can bring in. This is just 2 of the practices I currently work with. One of them is a 5-doctor practice with 2 locations, and in the last 3 years, we've brought in almost $900,000 of fresh income by reactivating 2,800 patients, and it's only cost us less than $90,000 to do that. I mean, that's incredible. Another is an 8-doctor practice with 3 locations, and this is even more incredible because we've only done this since March 2016. So it's not even 7 months. We've generated $1.3 million in 1,000 patients. Now, you're going to do that math and say, how did you do that? It just so happens it's a high surgical practice. We only focused on cataract diagnosis patients, and we had thousands of them not coming back. So when we started to bring them in, we started to generate ASC fees. We generated upgraded premium IOL fees. We generated a lot of LASIK fees. So that's a staggering number. And I would say don't use that as what your expectation would be, but practice 1 is certainly something you can expect. I find that generally a recall patient generates between $150 and $200 in that first visit. And that's because it's a comprehensive exam. A lot of times they're a glaucoma patient or a diabetic. They need other testing. So that's just 2 examples. I mean, this is all doable stuff. I find that a lot of practices, they plateau because of complacency. And the way to get off that mark is just as I suggested, get a small team together, start to look at the practice, start to make changes. People will get excited and re-engaged. And then as I finish, and I'm sure Dylan will say more and Bill will say more, let OptiCall have the opportunity to come in and talk to you. And you're welcome to call me. My information's up there as well. Be happy to talk to any administrators or physicians out there about things that can be done to increase the profits. Things are only going to get tougher in the years to come. They're not going to get easier. So we need to keep working at it. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Bill.
Thank you, Don. We really appreciate you being on the phone today. And Dylan, I know you're going to have some questions that might have come in over the course of the presentation.
Yeah, we've got a few questions that have come in. And I also wanted to mention, Don's got an offer as well on the survey that's going to be popping up for a free practice functionality assessment. That as well, he's got a lot of experience in the industry and can probably at least give you some pointers on how to increase efficiencies and revenue in your practice. One of the first questions, Bill, is somebody wants to know what exactly Boomerang is. Do you want to take that?
I'll let you take that. Go ahead.
Okay. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Boomerang, Boomerang is kind of a patient reactivation program that OptiCall started about 6 years ago. We partnered with a company called Brevium that has advanced data mining technology. So they're actually able to, we install their software onto your practice management database, and they're able to mine that database to identify patients that are past due for care. And you can actually set the filters as specific as you like, where you can determine how far back you want to go. Most practices might go 6 months to 2 years past due for care, but you can even prioritize the diagnosis types. So like a senior doctor, say in an ophthalmology practice, you might have a senior ophthalmologist that doesn't want to bring back general eye exams, but they do want to see their high priority patients, like say like a glaucoma patient or a diabetic retinopathy patient, where their schedules may be full, but they may have hundreds to thousands of general eye exams that are past due for care. And the system actually gives you the opportunity to give those patients to another doctor within the practice. So you might have a new doctor just looking to fill their schedule. So the way I look at it is you're bringing back patients, but these are almost like bonus patients because these are ones that were not responding to recalls. And we actually guarantee the program, and you only pay for the patients that are booked and show up. So a lot of people refer to it as a no-brainer solution. Bill, is there anything you'd add to that?
No, I think you did a good job. That's good. Okay.
Another question we have here is somebody says that they're currently using Solution Reach. How does this program differ?
Okay. I'll take that one, Dylan, if you like.
Okay.
Solution Reach is a great program. It's another program that can help communicate with patients. I mean, the bottom line is we want to communicate with our patients, new and existing, as much as we can. We may have patients that call in and just had some questions and got off the phone. So there are lots of good CRM programs out there that can help with that communication process. Solution Reach is primarily electronic communication, so emails, texts, different things like that. They can do automated phone calls. And it is a good program. It's cost effective, but the majority of it is based on email and text to cell phone. So in an ophthalmology practice, you have a lot of older patients that may not like to be communicated that way. Where Boomerang differs than that is that we actually make a live patient phone call or a live person phone call, and act as if we were part of the practice for all intents and purposes. The patient that's receiving that phone call thinks it's the practice that's calling. So that's probably one of the biggest differences, and there's a lot bigger impact with a live person calling than there is electronic media. I think they're both, if I owned a practice, I would do both. I would stack all my cards up and try to make my best play.
Thank you. And another thing that's worth mentioning is we schedule those patients back onto your practice management software. So it's it's a great solution for the practices. They get to fill their schedules with no effort. OptiCall puts them in the books. Another question here is, I'm currently using NextGen. Is that applicable for this service? And I'll take that. The answer is yes. Brevium software that we use for the program is integrated with, I would say, about 80% of the softwares that are available right now. And you can actually get a list of the integrations on Brevium's website. It's brevium.com. If you go under the software tab, there's a link for integrations, and it's got a list of all the different practice management softwares that are currently integrated. And even if your practice management system isn't listed on there, it doesn't mean that they can't integrate with it. So it'd be worth checking out to bring back these past due patients. I've got one more question here for Don. What is the first or most important thing that you would recommend to a new practice that you're talking to, Don?
Well, doing that self-evaluation, that's usually something I help with. But you've got to know where you are in order to know where you want to go. So the self-assessment is paramount to answer that question.
And what happens during that self-assessment?
You know, we look at all aspects of the practice operation. Look at the profit loss. Look at the clinic operation. Look at staff training. You know, everything is looked at and assessed for best in practice, because that's ultimately where we want to get to. We want to get the best in practice. It's not an arduous
Great, appreciate that.
It's actually an eye-opening process, and people enjoy it once we get started on it because it becomes fun. But of course, it builds a lot of improvement into it. Okay.
So we have one last question here. Can you elaborate a little bit more about practice plans that you mentioned, as far as I don't know if that was on the solutions or on the problems. Can you explain a little bit about what you meant with that?
Practice, I didn't hear what you said.
The practice plan, I think that was referring to the layout of the practice.
Oh, physical plan.
Physical plan, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, there you're looking at, what does your office look like? You know, it's the waiting room, 20-year-old chairs that really need to be replaced. And the funny thing is that it's very inexpensive to freshen up a waiting room. I mean, you can do that for probably $5,000, and it'll be a great $5,000 to spend. Because when people walk in, first we got to realize they remember what the office looks like, and when it looks the same after 10 years, 20 years with the same print hanging on the wall, they start to take notice. It's dated. It's old. That's the plan. Your equipment, obviously. You know, usually the equipment is fairly kept up to date because the doctors like the fancier, snazzier stuff. But I've been in practices that are very profitable that it's almost embarrassing that they've got exam chairs with rips in them. It's like, fix them. Make it look nice. Make it look like the practice you want to come to get your care.
Yeah, I've seen some of that myself, actually. I've seen ophthalmology practices that look like an abandoned elementary school, and it doesn't really give off the best impression.
Right. We don't want that. That's not what we want.
So there's one more question just about the recording. We are recording today's presentation. Everybody that registered will get the link to the recording. And unless anybody has anything else, I think that kind of wraps it up.
Okay,
Just want to say thanks everybody for tuning in today. Hope you do take advantage of those offers on the survey for the free phone assessment. It's 5 recorded calls that we'll place to your practice over a 2 to 3 week period. And like I said, we're not trying to stump the counselors. We're just trying to get a barometer on how well your staff is converting. Don's offering the free practice functionality assessment. It's a great stepping stone to get your practice moving in the right direction. And we're also offering a discount on our Boomerang program. It's a $500 discount for those that attended today's webinar. And we guarantee the results on the program within the first 90 days that you're going to have a positive return on investment, or we reimburse you the difference. So all of our practices on the program have been extremely happy. I'm confident you will be too. But, appreciate everybody for tuning in today. You can contact us by email or just respond to the email that goes out tomorrow from the follow-up if there's anything that we can help you with. Is there anything you guys would like to add?
No, I just want to thank everybody for their time today.
All right. Thanks a lot, Don. Appreciate you tuning in today. You guys have a good one.
Bye-bye.